We're not in a coffee shop today, but we're still drinking coffee.
Yeah.
So
I forgot mine.
Nah. Okay, man, it's been a weird time. But one thing I want to get off my chest real quick. I can't believe it's Q2 already.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. And the market's changing. Sometimes in some areas for the good, in some areas for the bad. We're kind of in an in-between spot. What do you think?
Yeah. No. I agree with you. Obviously going into the beginning of the year, we have these. What is it going to be like this year? It's interesting to see what's going on in this market. You and I spoke not too long ago. I was a little worried about a listing I had in December, and that one kind of just set the tone for the beginning of the year. Obviously, it's very, micro market specific. And
Well, tell us about that December deal. What was so different about it?
yeah, so listed the week before Christmas. 7 offers.
Yeah.
40K above list price.
Yeah.
But it was a very bread and butter price point for a single family residence.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I was mind blown. And that kind of set the tone with what I've been working with and working on the first quarter of the year. And I think a lot of it is obviously those price points, right? Because then you go into like the higher price points, crack a million. Those are sitting a little bit longer.
They're sitting longer, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's definitely not what I thought was going to be going into 2026.
Yeah, it's interesting because clients always ask us, hey, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? Should I wait? Should I pull the trigger now? And my go-to answer in any market really is it depends. It depends on the clients, on your specific situation. What are your needs? What are your wants, and what's your current financial outlook?
Right.
Because that will determine everything. The math doesn't lie. We are kind of in an in-between, this funky market. I think interest rates, they dipped a little bit. They were dipping. We're kind of seeing the light at the, like, oh my God, there's going to be some traction and some movement, and then they bounce back up. A lot of it has to do with uncertainty around the world. So I'm getting a lot of questions about that. How is this Iran conflict impacting real estate? And indirectly and directly, directly it's impacting our interest rates.
Right.
It is what it is. Indirectly, there's just a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety around what the economy is going to do. So I think most people, self included, everyone's kind of holding on to their dollars. Like, hey, let's be a little bit more mindful. Let's not spend frivolously or not overstretch ourselves. Case in point, the other day I went to Costco, not for gas, but it took me forever to get into the parking lot because the line at the gas station was, out to the stoplight. Oh my God! I'm like, I was trying to guesstimate, estimate how long it would take to be in that station line, and I would guess it'd be at least an hour to get to your mom. So, and it reminded me of pictures that I saw in textbooks, history textbooks when I was young, about the 70s.
Yeah.
And you see old video footage of the 70s, the whole stagflation, segment of the history book, where you would see cars lined up for miles to get gas, or people pushing their car into the gas station because gas was so excessively expensive, and it feels like that.
Yeah.
So gas prices are expensive. So that for transporting, logistics wise, like food, goods, consumer goods, etc. It's more expensive for the logistics companies to deliver that.
Right.
So they pass that cost on to the companies, and the companies directly passes that on to the consumer. So it's a ripple effect. So indirectly, everything's becoming more expensive. Then we've got inflation, which has been crazy since COVID, and then tariffs. So everything's expensive.
On that note, it's kind of we take ourselves out of what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like the way we get paid, or it's scary sometimes. Where it's like we're on commission dollars.
Yeah.
It can be great.
Yeah.
And it can be not so great, and it'll come in
Yeah.
waves, right? But sometimes we lose sight of the average, family.
Yes.
That they're on a fixed income.
Fixed
And
income.
sometimes we're like, man, how are you going to sit there for an hour to save, $15 on gas?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, those $15 can go a long way once everything starts getting added up. Everything's going up in price, right?
Absolutely.
So we have to be very, at least one thing I'm doing, I'm being very mindful and just aware of, the mentality of our clients, right?
Yeah.
Our past clients, current clients, and future clients.
Yeah, my word, it's a word that I have in my vocabulary often, in my internal vocabulary, and one word that I like to use right now a lot with clients is compassion.
Right.
Having compassion for them, and I'm also telling them, hey, be compassionate with yourself. Absolutely. As well. Hey, if you have to wait a little bit to make that purchase, then wait a little bit. It's okay. There's no harm, no foul in waiting. Again, if the time is right and you feel like there's an opportunity that you've got to take, then you've got to jump on it. Right. So yeah, that's a scary thing. I want to go back because you said something, about commission only dollars, and I think a lot of what on the flip side, kind of peeling, or piercing the veil, so to speak, of the industry, a lot of people, think that most realtors, are highly successful, it's easy money, and you mentioned it's 100% commission dollars. And sometimes we have really good months, and sometimes we have awful months, and sometimes we have awful months back to back to back. So what advice would you give other realtors to stay calm, stay steady in those dry months where things are just not moving, and we're essentially not getting paid because we're not closing deals?
Yeah, like 11 years in this business and going through a couple highs, a couple lows, and it's one thing that I'll never forget you telling me, just staying consistent. And it's funny, man, I was just driving here this morning, I was just remembering about COVID.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, and obviously you've been in the business 20 plus years, so you're well groomed and rounded in this business, and have definitely gone through
sometimes it doesn't feel like
some crazy times,
Yeah.
And the advice you give me, man, it's so valuable, and I'll never forget the uncertainty going into COVID, and you told me just brace yourself.
Yeah.
And we got that little taste of that run of success and checks.
Yeah.
And Dude, I'll never forget, Miguel. Every closing, like, save your money.
Yeah.
Save your money.
Yeah.
And you tell me you're gonna start seeing these flashy cars. You're gonna start seeing these flashy, realtors posting, trips.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, but just save your money. Don't buy into that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how it all played out. We had a great run.
Yeah.
Well, solid 2 years of just go.
Insanity.
And thankfully, man, I took your advice, and when everything kind of, let's just say, shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
Right? 2023-ish, 2024.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some personal stuff in my life.
Yeah.
I was able to manage, but now, go in retrospect, just seeing how everything has just played out in these 11 years, it's just always going back to phase one.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the success of things. It's easy to get caught up in the highs.
Yeah.
And when the lows hit, like they really kick you in the stomach, right?
They do.
But you always have to remember, just you at least for myself, I was able to do it once. I'm going to keep doing it over and over again. Absolutely. And always going back to that phase one mentality of, like, what propelled me.
Yeah.
What are the basics in this business that we have to do, which at the end of the day, it's all relationships, right?
Absolutely. Relationships, I think a solid work ethic.
Yeah,
consistency, a philosophy of contributing.
Right.
I think we take a stance of contributing to our clients' lives in the way that's different, right? Because we're guiding them, we're navigating the whole process for them. They're piloting it, but we're navigating it, right? So with intentions for them to grow.
Right.
So we have a growth mindset, growth mentality. We impart that onto our clients. And part of the idea with growth is that you're going to come into these plateaus. It's, like you lift weights, man, you're fit, right? So, when you start working out, you start, getting fit pretty fast. Then you hit a little plateau, and then you get a little dip, and then, you get discouraged. You're like, screw the gym. And then all of a sudden you just keep going, and you're in this little lull, and then bam, back up. And it works like that for just about everything in life. A long time ago, my wife had told me about, she was working a lot with the Chinese companies, and Chinese individuals, and this very successful man told her, it's really slow right now. His business was really slow. It was a cyclical, slow period. And she was asking him, well, what do you do, when it's so slow? How do you not go insane? You're usually so busy and profitable, and right now you're slow. And he said, you know what? We work so hard, we work so diligently that when it's slow, I'm taking advantage of it and resting. Now it's hard to rest when you're worried and have this mindset of like, oh my God, where's my next deal going to come from, or where's my next check going to come from? That's the truth. It's the reality. It's scary, but I think if we can find the calmness within that, and operate from a level of clarity, then things and alignment. Because once everything's aligned, things just kind of feel effortlessly. Things just start moving the way that they should. So in slow markets like this, I tell agents like, hey, just take a breath. We've been through this before. We're gonna be all right. And I tell my clients the same thing. Take a beat, pause, relax. Everything's gonna be fine. Let's just look at the angles calmly. So I think we take a calm approach to things. We're serious, and when we gotta go, we go. But we're calm. We try to stay steady like this.
You've got to learn to give ourselves a little bit more grace.
Yeah, absolutely. Grace is a beautiful word. I think we do need to give ourselves a lot more grace in all things, in all aspects of life.
So, Migs, with the current markets now, right? I feel like there's a lot of buyers that are on the sidelines just waiting. Mm-hmm. We are seeing more listings coming on the market, more sellers raising their hands saying, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. But a lot of our clients are still kind of in the mindset of that COVID market, right?
Yeah.
What are you seeing with the current market, with these expectations versus the reality of where we're at and how it's looking?
The one word that comes to mind is education.
Right.
We really have to educate our clients, and oftentimes we have to educate other agents, because some agents are still stuck in that mindset. Like, hey, it's like this is just like, the pandemic. So the expectation versus reality, formula is really interesting, because you're going to have some clients who are, they're embedded and they're in their mindset, and it's really hard to change them. So I think we have to take an approach of educating them in the language that they speak. So if you have someone super analytical, you got to show them numbers. Mm-hmm. The numbers don't lie. So we can pull data left and right to show what the market is doing. On the buyer side, I think that a lot of buyers have this mindset right now that they can get all of their closing costs paid by the seller. And it's not necessarily we can get credits. You're amazing at getting credits, bro. But I think there's a disconnect between the quantities that we can get, because the margins are a little lower for most sellers right now, the ones that are trying to sell, and because they're trying to make moves as well. But on some of my listings, I've gotten offers that are $50,000, $60,000 below list price, and they're asking for $30,000 in credits. I'm like, this is a non-starter. I've got an offer that's 150 above what you're netting me. Like, how can you even compete? So for us, I have to educate that agent. For buyers, is just getting them prepared. Hey, look, we have to make your offer look attractive. Granted, if there's a deal that's been sitting on the market for a long time, okay, cool, that's prime. It's a prime opportunity for getting that price a haircut. However, you and I take an approach of having conversations with the agent. Hey, what's the backstory? What's going on? What's the motivation? We're obviously going to do some serious data analytics and research around the property to see what the values are really like in that specific community or market, and then look at the features and benefits of the property compared to the others. On the selling side, it gets a little trickier, because hey, like my house is worth X amount of dollars. My neighbor just sold for this much. Yeah. Like, great. Yes, your neighbor sold for this much. Your neighbor has a half an acre. You don't. Right. Your neighbor has a full manicured landscape, a hardscape, pool, cabana, has a little ADU. You don't. So granted, we speak to it in kinder terms, right? But we do have to bring that to light. Like, hey, we've got to compare apples to apples. So our approach is really education, data, and then getting around the psychology of what the reality is. So reality versus perception. And yeah, everyone says perception is reality, but buyers are the ones who determine, for the seller, buyers are the ones who determine your price.
Absolutely.
Irrespective.
The market's going to speak.
Whatever the market is. Yeah, the market's going to tell you what your home is worth.
Yeah.
So what about you?
You know, I like to use a lot of case studies. So
Yeah.
especially with the most recent sales and the most recent clients I've been working with, closed transactions, and just kind of go based off of that. And you and I both know that the market's it's constantly changing, right? I feel like every 90 days we're going into like a new market.
Yeah.
At least that's how it's been over the last couple of years.
Yes.
So, and I do share that with my clients. And you know, there's a lot of buyers and sellers that I have been having conversations with over the last, you know, handful of months. And I do tell them, like, if this is your goal in the now, this is what it looks like now.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be, it likely will not be the same,
Yeah.
you know, 60, 90 days from now.
Yeah. So yes, like 90 days. 90 days is kind of a curve, where we see ups and downs. You know, and it's almost like a business plan, where, you know, I've always talked about. A lot of agents have business plans, or a lot of people are like, oh, I have a year business plan. It's really hard to predict a year. Yes, we cast out a big vision for our business plans, but we operate in a 90-day plan so that we can pivot. And with our clients, I take that approach too. I know you do as well, where we have a 90-day, you know, 60, 90-day approach where we need to pivot with the market. For me, the buyers and the sellers who win big are the ones that are able to pivot very, very quickly, who allow themselves to be like, you know what, I got to sidestep this and go. So it's the art of moving sideways, and then boom, you know, it's kind of like LaDainian Tomlinson, like the LT, LaDainian Tomlinson of the Chargers, man. That guy, he would boom, boom, and woof, right? So we have to do the same, and you know, educating our clients on how to make those moves quickly. You got to react very, very fast. I know there's sometimes there's this gut feeling, or not a gut feeling, but there's this notion of like, oh, I'm just gonna wait a little bit. Let me wait a little bit more. And once in a while it works out, and it does. And it's just like, but a broken clock's right it's correct 2 times a day too, you know. But for the most part, you got to take action really, really quickly, particularly in markets like this, in areas like San Diego that are not I'm not going to say not very affordable. Not affordable. It's a very expensive market. So any movement on interest rates is going to impact us very quickly. So we've got to pivot fast and just attack. So a 90-day sequence is an appropriate approach to the market. In our specific market, I can't speak to other markets, but San Diego specific, 100%.
Right. Reality versus expectations. Right?
100%. 100%.